Hello, and welcome to the DMing 201 Running D&D in Public seminar. My name is Sean Merwin, and I am the seminar coordinator for the Heralds Guild of DMs. We are a volunteer group who are trying to spread the joy of D&D and DMing. We create content for DMs and offer it for free at conventions and game days, and online at the Heralds Guild website. The Heralds Guild is sponsored by Bald Man Games. Bald Man Games offers convention support to companies like Wizards of the Coast at large events like Gen Con. If you are playing organized play events like the D&D Adventurers League at large conventions, there's a good chance that Bald Man Games is involved. For this seminar, I would like to introduce Derek Myers. Derek is the regional coordinator for Eastern Canada for the D&D Adventurers League, and he runs a great D&D website called dungeonsmaster.com. He will talk today about the various public play D&D campaigns and how to get the most out of them.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to jump right in. So this is DMing in public. Hopefully some of you have done this before. If not, we're going to make sure that you know everything you need to get started in your local community. I hope that a lot of the stuff we cover today is information you're already aware of as far as just generally running games. But if not, we'll cover some of the basics as well, and then we'll get into tips and tricks and that kind of thing. This will focus exclusively on how to get the Adventurers League started, but you'll find that a lot of this information will definitely port over to your home games. We'll make sure that we cover the difference between D&D Encounters, D&D Expeditions, and the D&D Epics, if you're not 100% sure what the difference is between those three. And yeah, we're just going to jump right into it, get you the tips and tricks and strategies you need to get started. So what's the difference between playing at home and playing in public? Well, when you're playing at home, your accountability is to your home group. 5, 6, 7 people, that's it. You guys want to have a good time, you do whatever you want to do in order to make sure you're having a good time. If it means creating some house rules or throwing other rules out the window and you're playing at home, absolutely fine. When you're playing in public, we need to ensure there's a certain amount of consistency. So there's a lot more structure around what you can and can't do. They do follow the rules as printed in the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, but there are also some of the optional rules that may or may not be applicable. So it's important that you are aware of what those are to ensure that everyone, whether you're playing at a big convention like Gen Con, whether you're playing at your local store, whether you're playing in Canada, the US, Europe, wherever, or even online, they have an online version of the D&D Adventurers League, there is that consistency. My character is on par with your character. So, for example, things like you can't roll your stats. You have to use the point buy or the set array. It's things like that to ensure consistency. The Adventurers League uses the 5th edition rules, the current rule set, and is all the campaigns are set in the Forgotten Realms. And as we mentioned, they're divided into 3 groups. You've got Encounters, which is run once a week, Wednesday nights. It's part of a longer ongoing campaign, generally runs 3 to 6 months. And the sessions can run anywhere from an hour to, say, 2-3 hours, depending on what your group wants to do. Expeditions are one-shot games. They run about 4 to 5 hours at a time. You get a start, middle, and end. It's completely self-contained. If you only have time to do one thing, those are great. They're completely autonomous. D&D Epics are exactly that. They're epic. They're massive. They do 1 per season, which is about every 6 months or so. And they are exclusive to big cons, Gen Con, Origins, PAX, that kind of thing. And they generally will kick off or conclude an adventuring path. So if you want to do the epics, you got to come out and try them at one of the cons. Okay, so I play at home. Now I want to play in a public. I want to go to the store. What do I do? Well, first thing you got to do is find a store. Where can you do this? Wizards has a great lookup tool on their site. You just go to their site. Where can I play? You click the button, and you punch in your zip code, your postal code, your address, your city, whatever information you've got, and it'll tell you these are the stores near you that are already running it. In order for the stores to appear on that list, they have to actually register and sanction through the WPN tool. It's the same one they use to sanction their Magic the Gathering stuff, so I guarantee they know how to use it. And that database is shared with Wizards so that it all comes together. But you might have a local store in your area that is not currently running. Good idea. You can go out and tell them, hey, I'm interested in Dungeons & Dragons. I want to help you get started. And that's what we're hoping that you guys are going to take away from this, is what you need in order to do that. If they are running already, find out. Are they running encounters? Are they running expeditions? Are they just running casual games? If you're super keen, like I am, offer to volunteer. Offer to be a leader in their store to help get things organized and to try and recruit new players to come on in. By the way, we'll do questions and answers at the end, but if you've got something along the way, jump right in. We found yesterday it worked a lot better as people asked questions as we were covering the topics. All right. Playing in public is a little bit different than playing at home. I find you have generally a much stronger sense of responsibility. If you're running a D&D encounter session at your store once a week, there's a lot of people that are counting on you to be there. Not to mention the store, if they're advertising it, expects that there's going to be D&D running. Make sure that if and when you get started running in the store, know your limits. Don't burn out. Don't burn out quickly. Start with the low-level adventures. Get people on board. The low-level adventures tend to be easier to run. They tend to be able to draw characters and players in more easily. Just make sure you're mindful of the amount of work is going to be required, and pace yourself. All right. You want to run in public. You found a store. They're awesome. They're happy to give you some seats. That's well and good. Now you need an adventure. The adventures are available for free. Any of the stores that sanction the events in that WPN tool and appear on that lookup thing through Wizards, they will get an email from Wizards once a month that says, hey, we see you're going to be running games. Here's the link where you can download the adventures for free. They give you a password and a link. If you're going to run at the stores, ask the people who are sanctioning at the stores to send you that email, or some of the stores will actually download the mods and print them up for you. Not as common, but it does happen. This is, think of it like a perk for DMs. You get access to all the mods for the whole season on the database. If you do get access to that site, we ask you not to share it around too broadly. Again, this is sort of a reward to the DMs. You get access to all the hard work that people have put in. The mods are free. Wizards doesn't make any money off them, yet they do pay some of the people to work on it. So, we want to try and keep that exclusivity. We want to make sure that the DMs are the only ones that have the mods. In reality, we know they're out there, but try not to be part of the problem. Try to be part of the solution. When you're prepping the adventure, try to make sure you've read the whole thing cover to cover. For the expeditions, which you're going to do completely in one sitting, absolutely. You have to know it all the way through. Counters can run months, and the book can be upwards of 100 pages. No one expects you to have that read on the first week. Just make sure you've read enough that you can run your session. Although with encounters, the more you know about what's coming, the more you can introduce earlier on. So preparation is definitely important. One of the things that's very important with the prep is you get a chance to look up any rules you may not be familiar with. Mechanics you don't know. There might be a booby trap or some other effect that doesn't come up very often, and suddenly someone's had this great idea to throw it in there. Gives you a chance to look it up and not slow down your game when you see it for the first time. Also gives you a chance to look up monster stats, spells, anything else that you may not know off the top of your head that will be required when you're running the game. And if you can't find the answers to something, there is a ton of support out there. Wizards of the Coast has a number of different forums. There's one that's specifically for 5th edition rules. There's one that's specifically for Adventurers League play. Also, the Adventurers League themselves have a website with an FAQ and a lot of great articles. And then you can always just turn to social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google+. We are, all the people with the Adventurers League, especially all the admins, are on those forums, and they are on them all the time. Even the Wizards guys are available through social media. There's been lots of times where I'll be playing, we'll have a rules question, we'll give a tweet out to Jeremy Crawford or Robert Aducci, and we'll say, hey, this has come up, what do you think? 9 times out of 10, they get back to us before the event is even over. So, I mean, you can't guarantee that's going to happen, but it happens more frequently than not. So if you've got questions, there is help out there. And, I mean, worst case, ask the other DMs and players around and in your group. But if you're looking for official, these are 4 great places to try. Okay, we're talking about rules. You're not expected to be a rules encyclopedia. You do not have to have everything memorized. You should have a pretty good grasp of how it works, but you should have your support with you. Have your player's handbook, have your Dungeon Master's Guide, have your monster manual. I find a good rule of thumb: public play, home play, any play. Something comes up and you don't know and you're not sure and nobody at the table seems to have any idea of how it's going to work, as the DM, make the call and move on. The only time we like to stop, well, we don't like to stop. The only time we generally will stop the game completely to look it up is if there's an extreme consequence. Hey, if we don't do this right, a character could die. In that case, we will stop to get it right. But most of the time, just make the call and move on. Pacing is important. It's not that critical that you get the exact rule right on that exact moment. Just make the call that you think is right and move on. But make sure you look it up later, so if it comes up again, you know. All right, so the Adventures League is a group that runs in parallel with Wizards. They are the body that runs all the public play. They have some of their own support material. They have a player's guide, which includes a lot of detail on some of those rules we talked about before. What can you and can't you do in public play? Things like you can't roll your stats. You have to use the array in order to ensure that consistency. Some of the variant rules, they say you can and can't use as well. In the new Elemental Players download that's available online, the flying race, the Arakocra, is not available in public Adventures League play. So again, those kinds of things are specified in the book, which things are and which things are not legal for the season of play that you happen to be in. So I encourage you as DMs to make sure you've read it. I encourage you as DMs to possibly even bring a hard or soft copy with you so that you can share it with players. And definitely make sure your players are aware this document exists and encourage them to read it. They don't have to read it before they play, but it is a good idea that they are familiar with it. It also has a good section in the back about factions. So for brand new players or players new to 5th edition who don't know anything about the factions, there's 3 or 4 pages in the back, summarizes them really nicely. I always keep a copy just for that reason so the players can do it. And again, we talked about the difference between encounters, expeditions, and epics. So when you get new players coming in, let them know. This is expeditions. We're going to do a one-shot today. Or this is encounters. This is part of a longer story, but we're going to work you in right away. And if you want to keep playing, come out every week. We're going to continue on with this campaign setting. All right, so you're ready to rock and roll. You found your store. You've got your module downloaded. You've arranged to have people come on out. This is general DMing 101. Make sure when you're ready to rock, you've got a copy of the adventure. You've got dice. You've got a screen if you use one. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Scrap paper, pencil, erasers. If you're going to use maps and minis, have that. Have the rule books we've already talked about, and have a copy of that player's guide handy. As the DM for public play, it's also a really, really good idea to have pre-generated characters available. They are available through the Wizard site for download. They are available on the Adventures League site for download. These are the 5 pre-generated characters that come with the box set, the Lost Mines of Phandelver starter set. Hopefully by now we've all seen them. They're level 1, but they do have information for how to progress these characters up to, I believe, level 4. So if you've got brand new players and they don't own any of the books, they haven't downloaded anything, these pre-generated characters have everything they're going to need for at least a few sessions of play. And again, dice, pencil, scrap paper, all the things players might need. Also, for Adventures League, they should have a log sheet, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Professionalism. We put this slide in because punctuality is huge. We have a big problem at one of the stores where we play. We say we start at 6 o'clock. We have never started at 6 o'clock. It's 6:15, it's 6:30, it's 6:45. Try to do what you can to lead by example. Be on time. Be ready to run on time. If you've got a schedule, try to stick to it as closely as possible and make sure that people are talking to each other. We found that even though we do run late, people are getting a lot better at saying, hey, I had to work today. I'm going to be a half an hour late. Save me a seat. So again, just a side note on that one, but definitely try to lead by example. Question,
So,
yes?
what do you do in that case? Someone says they're going to be half an hour late. Do you hold the game up or do you go on?
Absolutely not. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about minimums and maximums. You have to have a certain number of players at the table. Obviously, if you don't have enough to run and someone says they're on their way, you're going to wait rather than kill the game. What we've done at our store is fortunately, we do have enough tables that we can slot people in. Previously, we didn't have enough room to accommodate more than a certain number, and so we told people, first come, first serve, or we create a sign-up sheet. We will try to hold the game if we can, especially for encounters where it's an ongoing campaign. So it's that you have the same characters at the same table week after week, but at the same time, you only have so many hours, so many minutes to run a slot. If it's something like a convention, obviously you're on the clock. The game has to end at this time because another game is rolling right in. So, play it by ear and use your judgment. But generally, we sort of set the ground rules with the players, and we repeat them every week. We want to try to start on time. We want to try and start on time. We'll save you a seat if we can, but let them know what your expectations are, and then see what you can do with it. Record keeping. Adventurers League requires the characters to have log sheets. The players must keep log sheets for every character. This is done for a number of reasons. You can play the same mod more than once, but you have to do it using different characters. The same guy can't play the same mod 3 times until he actually gets the magic wand. He plays it once. If he doesn't get it, too bad. This is also our way of determining if your characters are legal. You track your XP, you track your treasure, you track your gold, your renown, your downtime days. All the things that characters will track are on that sheet, as well as your name and your DCI number, your character's name, all that good stuff. It's a good way for you and for the DMs to be able to find out what you've played before, how much experience you have, how much you need to level up. I do want to emphasize DMs have the right, the ability to ask players to produce those logs if you have any questions. First level guy shows up with 3 magic items. Hey, how'd you get those? Oh, honest to God, I played these games. Let me see your log. I'll be honest though, in all the years I've been playing, I've never once been asked to produce my log, and I've never once asked to see a log, but I do make sure that the record keeping happens. Attendance sheet, very good idea. You want to build the gaming, you want to build a gaming community where you live, and the easiest way to do that is once people come in the store, get their contact details, get their email address, get their social media stuff, and that way you can keep in touch with them even if they're not coming back every week. Reach out to your local coordinator if you have one. If you don't and you want to become one, let me know. Local coordinator essentially will work with you to try and get information from all the various stores in your community and try to perhaps create a master list so that when there are special events, you let all gamers know and you don't have to worry about just, well, we have 10 guys at my store, but we'd really like to do this special event at an upcoming convention, or we want to. A few years ago, they did the Vault of the Dracolich, where it was a giant battle interactive, and it worked really well, but you needed like 20 or 30 people. We had a list of players from 3 or 4 different stores, and we just blasted out the information. Hey, guys, this is what's going on. So try to collect that information to build up that repertoire in your community. But make sure players know it's optional. You know, privacy is a big thing these days. Some people are a little bit more hesitant than others to provide that. Encourage them to do it. It's not required. Same thing with the DCI numbers. You need to sign them up for a DCI. You need their name. Some people are like, no, we must have your name and email and your address and your... No, we only need their name. But if you can get that other stuff, so much the better. Okay. We were asked, do we hold up the game? Well, you need 3 to 7 players. If we only got 2, you're not a legal table. You must have 3, and you can't exceed 7. I hate to turn players away. Believe me, I do. But you want to make sure the table is legal. 7 is your max. If you're too light, the DM cannot run a character as an NPC to bring your total up. The DM cannot run their own character in order to bring that number up. And players at the table cannot offer to run 2 characters, even if they say, well, this is my primary guy who will get the XP, and this guy will not actually get the XP. Not allowed. You got to have 3 unique players. Every warm body at the table needs to have 1 character sheet. 4 or 5 is sort of that sweet spot. Most of the modules are written, I believe, for a party of 5. So there is numbers in there for scaling, which we'll talk about in a minute. 7 can get a little bit difficult. So we find if you've got 2 or 3 tables at that max, it's always better to try and split off and create another group and pull 1 or 2 from each table. But 7 is the number. So if you've got 7, it's going to slow things down. So be mindful of that if you're under a time crunch. But do what you can. 3 to 7 is your number. Some of the stuff we talked about, we'll go over it again here real quick. So characters have to be legal for Adventures League. So you got to make sure that you followed all the guidelines. Make sure you've got that consistency that we're looking for public play. Got to have the log sheet and produce it if asked. Again, I've never asked for it, but I see them out. I know they're there. Characters got to be the right level. Adventures are divided into tiers. We got a 1 to 4, 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 to 16. For expeditions, this is an absolute. If your guys are 1 to 4, they can play that 1 to 4 mod. One of the guys is leveled up to 5. Too bad, he's leveled out. He's got to go to the next tier. This is done in large part just to ensure there's that balance. You don't have a first level guy adventuring with a 10th level guy. For encounters, it's a little bit more fluid because it's an ongoing campaign. Excuse me. And the rule of thumb is the highest level in the party should not be farther away than 2 levels from the lowest guy in the party. So as the game progresses, you're going to hit that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th levels. If you run a level party of level 7 guys, you shouldn't really have anyone in there under level 5, that 2-level margin. Again, it's not really an official written down, but you got a party at level 7, you bring in a level 1, he's going to get smoked. But if he doesn't, he's probably going to earn enough XP to pump him up a few levels in one shot, which also comes with its own challenges. So try to keep within that 2-level band for encounters. And magic items must be logged. Certificates, this has been a hot contention. Certificates are not required. You play the mod, and you get a +1 sword at the end, and the guy says, I'm taking it, and he writes it on his log sheet, he writes it on his character sheet. That's all that's required. He's good. Only reason you need a certification, one of those cardboard cutouts, is if you think you ever want to trade it away. You do, you flip it over, you sign your name, the new guy getting it signs his name, all good. You have traded it to another guy. Items have to be traded for like items based on their rarity, uncommon, common, and rare. But 5th edition's been out a year now. I have never seen in my store anybody trade anything. Magic is so rare, they get an item, they're hoarding it. Or they're saying, well, I'll take it, and if something better comes up, I'll trade it. And I'm just thinking, if something better comes up, why would anyone want to give it away? But at the beginning of 5th edition, people got real hot and bothered about these certs. I think it was a lot to do about nothing. After a month or two, and in my area anyway, the roar calmed down. We didn't have any issues after that. So, sorry, were you going to ask about certs?
Yeah, so no, actually a question on the level. So you can have a character level 1 playing level 4. Are the adventures written where level 1 can actually do anything?
Yeah, with the bounded accuracy, the numbers... so the question was, what if you got a level 1 character playing in a group with level 4 characters? Will the module accommodate for that and compensate? Is the level 1 guy going to be out of his element? You can definitely run it that way. The bounded accuracy certainly helps level 1 to level 4. You'll find the characters' numbers are pretty much in sync. The only thing that's really going to be off are the hit points. Their attack scores are going to be pretty much the same. Their armor class is going to be pretty much the same. Their damage output is going to be pretty much the same. The hit points is really the one you got to watch for. But other than that, the way things are set up, like all their skill numbers are going to be in the same ballpark. So whether your rogue's level 1 or level 4, his likelihood of finding the trap or opening the lock are going to be pretty much the same, regardless of the level 1 or level 4. Unlike say 4th edition, where a single level can represent a huge difference in the numbers. Hit points. That's really what you got to watch for. All right. Hopefully, none of this slide is new news to you, but we're going to cover it anyway. There are certain social conventions which we hope are understood and accepted by everyone in public in general, but also in public play in general. And it's a good idea to, in some cases, cover these early on. These are, some of the most basic things, like make sure you're wearing pants and make sure you don't smell. But some of the things that are more important are to do with specifically with the D&D Adventurers League. This is a game of inclusion. We want everyone to feel welcome. We want everyone who is even remotely interested in playing to try the game because we know they're going to love it. So we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome. We want to make sure everyone is encouraged to participate when they're sitting at the table. And we want to make sure that everyone's ideas are respected. And we want to make sure that anyone who is acting counter to any of these things is told that that is unacceptable. We want to set expectations on a number of things early on. Electronic devices. This is a big thing, especially in the last few years. Everybody's got one. Everyone wants to use it. People can't seem to put it away for more than a second. Personally, how I do it is I tell people up front, look, I'm not going to ask you to turn it off for 4 hours. I know that's unrealistic. I'm going to ask you to turn it on to mute. I'm going to ask you to keep it to a minimum. I tell people, if your turn comes around and you're busy playing a game or tweeting or on Facebook or whatever, then it's becoming a problem. As long as it's not interfering with the game, as long as you're not slowing things down because you're on your device, as long as you don't have to keep asking me to repeat what's happened because you weren't listening, I'm good. If you do get a call, I say to people, just step away for a second. Your character's dodging until you come back, and we're good to go. A lot of players will now only bring soft copies of their characters on their laptop or their tablet, so I think it's unrealistic to tell people they can't have devices at all. Just make sure that you set those expectations and make sure that everyone understands what you want from them. And at the end of the day, anyone who can't can't follow the guidelines you've set out about etiquette and conduct in general, give them a warning. And at the end of the day, if they're still being a problem, you do have it within your right as the DM to ask them to leave. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I also want to emphasize, this came up in the seminar yesterday, make sure once you do start running at a store in your neighborhood, talk to the people at the store. Make sure they are completely on board with the rules and regulations that D&D Adventurers League set out as far as the rules of conduct. Make sure the store will support any action that's taken to, if you have to remove someone because of any of these reasons or for any reason, really, make sure the store understands that these are the only circumstances under which we're going to ask someone to leave. Will you support me? The last thing you want is to say to a character, you're being disruptive. We're going to have to ask you to leave. And then he goes to the store owner, and the store owner says, no, everyone gets to play. Too bad. Just make sure everyone is on the same page so that you don't run into that problem. That can be especially troublesome. I know at my store we do a pay-to-play. The players have to pay a small fee to participate. If they've paid, sometimes players think that gives them the right to do whatever they want. So again, just make that clear and make it clear that you're not getting a refund. If you're a jerk and we have to kick you out, that's your problem. Okay, D&D Public Play is basically a commercial for Dungeons & Dragons. We want people to learn about this hobby. We want them to see it in action. We want them to try it before they buy it, and Public Play gives them that opportunity. When we're running D&D in public, we are the ambassadors for Dungeons & Dragons. We are the ambassadors for the D&D Adventures League. We are the ambassadors for Wizards of the Coast. It is up to us to set a good, positive example for how the game works and what the property is like. You want to make sure that first-time players have a phenomenal experience because you want them to come back. You want them to play again and again. They can sit down. They get that pre-generated character. They don't need to buy anything the first time through. They don't need a player's handbook. But hopefully they play it, they try it, they say this is great. You tell them where they can get the free PDF download of the basic rules, and they say this is great, but I want to play a monk or a warlock or a barbarian, and those aren't in the basic rules. Encourage them to buy the book then. But first-time players, you want to make sure that they have a good time. What I often do is to take a brand new player, I sit them next to my most experienced player, and I have them, work together. That way, as the GM, I don't have to stop the whole game for 15 minutes to explain the history of Dungeons & Dragons to one new player. You give them the basics of what they need to know. You explain how the main parts of their character sheet work, and you jump right into it. Don't give them that information overload. Outside of context of the game, they're not going to understand how a lot of the stuff works. Just give them the very basics, and then as things come up, explain it on the fly, and hopefully, if you've paired them up with a more experienced player, that guy or girl will, give them the rundown as things come up. In a public forum, you're going to have people walking around that are not actually playing. You're going to have spectators, especially at a con. You're going to have people walking up, hey, what's this? Oh, I've heard of this. You'll also possibly have friends of people who are playing come up. It's not a private area. You're going to have people come around. Again, you're that ambassador for D&D. Be polite. Hey, would you like to play if there's room at your table? Would you like to play with us? Very rarely do they say yes, sit down. Usually they're like, maybe next time. Take that opportunity. Give them a pre-generated character. Here, why don't you take one of these pre-gens? Look it over, and then the next time you come, you're ready to go. Let me take down your contact information. I can email you our schedule when we're playing next. Here's my email address. Give me send me a message if you've got any questions. Encourage them to watch. But if they don't want to watch, encourage them to stick around. Or if they do want to watch, encourage them to stick around, but just make sure that they're not going to be disruptive to the table. If a buddy's girlfriend or boyfriend comes over, hey, I don't want to play, I just want to watch, that's great. But if then they spend the next 20 minutes talking to them, hey, what are we going to do after the game? Let's go here. I met with this guy. Hey, just like the cell phones. If that's going to happen, I just say, hey, if this can't wait, could you step aside for a few minutes? Your character's dodging until you come back, and that way you can continue on with the main game. We sort of talked about this a little bit already as well. Set house rules. Okay. So you have to follow the rules, no question about it. And the Adventures League provides guidelines for some of the optional rules that you can and can't use. But there are some rules, like stealth, for example, in 5th edition, where it is not as clearly spelled out as it's been in previous editions. And this creates a lot of ambiguity and flexibility, which in a home game is fantastic. You do whatever you want to make your group happy. Public play, it can be a little bit more dicey. I'm going to continue to do stealth because I think this is a good example. Some DMs are very lenient with how the new stealth rules work, and people playing rogues love it. They take full advantage of it. They have a great time. They have built the character around stealth. I hide, I step out, I shoot, whatever. And the players that have that kind of tactical ability love it. Until they play at a table with another DM who doesn't interpret the stealth rules the same way as their previous DM. Now they want to do things, and the new DM is saying, well, since it's not as clearly defined, this is how I run it. It's those kinds of things where it's not explicit how it's supposed to work. There is that flexibility from DM to DM. I like to try and set those things right at the beginning. When I ask people, what are you playing? And someone says, I'm playing a rogue. I have a quick conversation. Are you a hide and shoot rogue? Are you a run up, stabby rogue? And if the stealth is going to be something, that's one of the ones I talk about real quick. Because in many cases, there will be multiple tables running at the same time. And if my interpretation of some rules is going to make your job as a player harder and you don't think you're going to have a good time working within the parameters I'm going to set as the DM, I want you to have that flexibility to be able to say, well, thank you very much, I'm going to go sit with the next table. It doesn't usually work out that politely. Usually I get some bad words thrown my way about how I don't know what I'm talking about. But by having that conversation the first 5 minutes, it certainly is better than having that conversation 90 minutes into the mod the first time it comes into play and a guy has a hissy fit at the table. It's happened. I've seen it happen. It's happened at my table. It even happened in my home group. So there are some rules like that where they are hot button issues. Take 2 minutes at the beginning to just talk about it. All right, let's see. Where are we going here? When you start the game, what do you do? So again, this should not be a surprise to anyone who's played D&D. Public play, you often get 6 or 7 complete strangers together who don't know each other, who have never played with each other. Their level of experience with the game is going to be all over the place. The type of player they are is going to possibly be all over the place. So start with the basics. Who are you playing? Tell me about your character. What's their name? What's their race? What's their class, background, faction affiliation? And this is where you get a sense of the players' types. And if you're going to stick around for the next seminar, Teos does a great job of talking about all of these things as well. If you're playing part of an ongoing adventure like D&D Encounters, it happens week to week to week to week, and you get new players, they need to know what's been going on. Don't waste a lot of time on that. 5 minutes, bring them up to speed. I actually like to get the other players to provide that background. That way, if, as a DM, I don't give away something that maybe the players have overlooked, but more importantly, if the players have maybe gone down a path that incorrectly, they can share that incorrect information. It can create a lot more fun and opportunities. And by having the players tell the story out loud, the other players can often correct each other and clear up any confusion that might have happened. Excuse me. For self-contained adventures like the expeditions, really there's not a lot of background required. Yes, the expeditions for a season take place in part of a bigger story arc. You can play them in any order. You don't have to play them all. You can play them all. It doesn't matter. For example, in Elemental Evil, really they just have to know. It takes place in the town of Maulmaster. There's a few things with Maulmaster, magic and such. I spend 2 or 3 minutes just going over that real quick, and then we jump right in. I ask people who've played what are the other mods, and then we go from there. And if you've got brand new players joining a game for the first time, especially with Encounters where it's an ongoing story, it may not be optimal to have a character begin wherever you ended off last week. I strongly encourage you to just wave your DM magic wand and say, the new player magically appears next to you. He is a part of the group. He is implicitly trusted. Go. Even if you know the very next room, there are a bunch of NPCs sitting in there having beverages, and as soon as they walk through the door, we can just say the new guy is there. That's when the party decides to take 45 minutes before they open that door, and you've got a new player sitting there not doing anything. Include them immediately. Immediately. It happens. All right. At a con, especially at a con, timing is everything. Your slot runs from 12 to 4. That's it. 4 o'clock, a new group is coming in. Watch the clock. Make sure you're following that schedule. Obviously, this is a little bit less important if you're playing at your local store, but I know like one of the stores we play, they close at 10 o'clock. Whether you're done or not, they're closing. So you got to know how long things are going to take. Most of the expedition mods have a little table of contents right at the beginning, and it says this is a 4-chapter mod. 30 minutes, 2 hours, 30 minutes. It gives you a guideline of how long each section should take. Try to follow those guidelines as much as possible, and be mindful of where you can cut stuff if you realize you're running long. If the players are having a good time in that first section, it says 30 minutes and they're running an hour, but they're loving it, use your judgment, see where else you can adjust that. If you are in a situation where you need to skip over stuff or cut stuff, what I find is often a good way to do it is rather than get the minis out and roll dice, just talk them through it. Turn it into a theater of the mind, a little bit of a dialogue. Hey, you're on the caravan and you're going down the road and bandits jump out. What do you think happens? Oh, well, I think I blast them with a fireball. I think I jump off and I hide and I shoot. And you just talk it out for a few minutes and describe the situation. And there, an encounter that could have taken 20 minutes, half an hour, has taken 5 minutes of dialogue. You still get the sense that it's happened. You can still introduce any of the important elements that might have been related to that encounter, but you've probably got yourself back on track as far as the timing. Inspiration is a new mechanic for 5th edition. Inspiration is a mechanic that encourages players to play to those character traits, and when they do that, you give them their inspiration. I like to use little poker chips. You give them the inspiration, and it gives them an opportunity to roll 2d20s with advantage on some upcoming roll of their choice. I also like to award inspiration when people just do cool, awesome, crazy ideas, something that is out of the box, rule of cool, and award them for doing it, reward them for doing it. I leave the poker chips in plain sight on the table, and I tell everyone, these poker chips represent inspiration. And I want you to help me adjudicate when this should be handed out. Once the players realize they have that flexibility, they will encourage each other. Hey, you know what would be cool? If your guy tries this. I don't know, it's going to be a tough check. Yeah, but whether you do it or not, you'll probably get inspiration because it'll be awesome. Then when you want to do it next time, it'll be easier. Hey, that makes perfect sense. I run through the door by myself and I, bang the pots and pans together. Oh my God, now they're coming at you. Do it. Award inspiration liberally. Encourage the players to remind you of the best times to give out that inspiration. Once the players start rewarding it and encouraging you, they're going to encourage each other. Games when I forget to put those poker chips on the table, we go 4 hours and nobody gets inspiration for anything. It's one of those things, out of sight, out of mind. So public play especially, use it, award it liberally, try to keep it going as much as possible. Problem players. I'm sure we've all experienced games where you have a problem player or two, hopefully not two. D&D is a game. Most people want to just come out and have a good time. As a DM, you want to facilitate that good time. But from time to time, players will be disruptive. In many cases, they're not doing it on purpose, but in some cases they are. The biggest, the worst, the most common example I see is, well, my character is evil and he's a jerk, and I'm going to role play him that way. And look at how good my role playing is. I'm being a great jerk at the table today, but I'm not really like that. My character's a dick. It's like, no. I make it very clear at the beginning. You want to play evil alignment, you want to play a character that's a little bit left of center, that's fine, as long as it's not disruptive. I usually give players one warning about that. I'm usually very clear, hey, that kind of, you might be lawful evil in your home games, but that's not how we're going to work it here today. Just make it clear. Everyone, regardless of alignments, regardless of factions, regardless of affiliations, the expectation is the players are going to be friendly with each other and work together to accomplish the goals. Don't be disruptive. Anyone who is being disruptive, anyone who is, this goes back to that respect slide we had earlier. Anyone who is making fun of other players, anyone who is being too bossy, anyone who's being, who's excluding people, any of those bad things, give them a warning, or, and if they keep doing it, let them know, like, hey, we're gonna ask you to leave. Depending on the severity, you may not even give them a warning. Hey, that is absolutely unacceptable. You're gonna have to leave. You're not welcome here today. I've never had it come to that. I have given out quite a few warnings. Usually the warnings sort of, people get the idea. Again, we do pay to play at my store. You give them a warning and they realize, oh my God, if I get kicked out, I'm not going to get my money back. And this is where it's important that the people at the store are on board. You tell them, the only time I'm going to ask a guy to leave is if he's being disruptive, if he's being insensitive, if he's being, racial comments or things that are just out of line, I'm going to ask him to leave. The D&D Adventures League Players Guide, it has like rules for players, rules for DMs. It's very clear in there. Bold text. DMs absolutely have the right to ask players to leave if there's a problem or if they're being disrupted. And no edition wars, not as much now, but at the beginning of 5th edition, we got a lot of people, I don't like this as much as Pathfinder. I don't like this as much as 4th edition. This version sucks. Hey, you know what? If it's something like a con, every game is being run here. You don't like this one? Go play the other one. We want you to play this one if you're going to have a good time. We want you to try it out. But, if you're not having a good time or you like the other system better, keep it to yourself. Again, this is one of those examples of being disruptive. We've had a few people that just won't shut up about how great Pathfinder is and how much they hate D&D 5e. Hey, everyone's entitled to their opinion. If you don't like this game, no one's forcing you to play it. So.
What about they're kind of like in a shell, they're just having a hard time cracking it. That's like the opposite problem. Too quiet.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about that. The next seminar is all about that, different player types. Again, I find that you want to have the players try to encourage each other. As the DM, I often will make sure that everyone gets a chance. We'll come to this, but I'll jump into it now real quick. Sometimes at the table, you'll have one or two like real alpha personalities that want to, even though my character has low intelligence, low wisdom, low charisma, I am the leader, I am the thinker, I'm going to tell the party what to do. I try to give everyone a chance to talk. So that A personality guy might jump in after, once you realize how it's working, just say, okay, that's great. Why don't we see what everyone else has to do? And I try to encourage everybody to have an opportunity to speak. Usually I try to do it with humor. Hey, you've been talking for an hour. Let's see if anyone else can beat that record today. Who wants to get inspiration for playing the quiet game? I'll bet you can't win it. There are ways to do it without pointing. And I find that, because I'm a player like that a lot myself, I'm just so passionate, enthusiastic, and I want to help everybody. Sometimes you can be too helpful, and a lot of times players don't even realize it. So sometimes a gentle reminder is all it takes, and especially if there are 2 or 3 players together that seem to be a group of friends, if you're at a local store where everyone knows each other, you start to realize who the blabbermouths are and who the quiet people are, And the group can often end up policing itself, and the DM can just remind you, hey, you know what? I think this week Joe should make all the decisions, because last week he really didn't seem to participate as much, which I think was largely in part to this side of the table. And, you just sort of, humor is the best way to deflate that one. But do what you can. Okay. We talked about this. Someone was asking about, what if I got a level 1? What if I got a level 4? It is very clear in the mod, you do have the ability and the power to make adjustments as needed. Higher level party is going to need monsters that are a little bit more powerful. The DCs might need to be a little bit higher. You might have to throw more monsters in to keep them challenged. Likewise, a smaller party or a lower level party, you're going to have to pull things out or they're going to get crushed. You don't want to make it too easy. You don't want to make it too hard, but you want to make sure everybody's having a good time. So if you're, this is a lot more challenging for new DMs. They don't know when to pull punches or when to add things in, but it doesn't take long to realize that something's not jiving. All right, we are out of time. I appreciate you guys for coming out today. Thank you very much. Don't forget to sign up if you haven't already. This is also a good indication of whether or not they're going to keep running these seminars. So we want to know how many people come out, and also it reflects on me. So make sure you sign up so that they know whether or not to have me come out and do more of these. I hope you had a good time. Like I said, if you got any questions, my contact details, you can grab a card off the table. Thanks for coming out, guys.